We are now in part 4 of our lecture on Mill. Here we're going to address some criticisms that Mill addresses. Criticism 1 is that happiness is unattainable. Criticism 2 is that happiness is rare. And then Mill offers real reasons for lack of happiness, and those have to do with caring and contemplation, rather than that happiness is unattainable or that it's rare. The first criticism of his position that Mill responds to is that happiness may be unattainable, and therefore a completely different discussion of the good life is needed. Perhaps this criticism means to point out that happiness is just too vague of a term, and to put into question whether anyone really knows what happiness is. Mill's response to these critics, those who say that happiness is unattainable, is that utilitarianism still has a lot to say to them about what good actions should do. They should reduce suffering. Mill takes it that everyone is familiar with suffering, such that the goal of reduction of suffering is clear, even if the goal of attaining happiness is not. The second criticism of his position that Mill responds to is that happiness is possible, but that it is, by its very nature, unsustainable and too rare an experience to really make it the goal of ethics. Mill thinks that the idea here is that happiness is this extreme pleasure that is an ecstatic rapture, much like the extreme thrill of a roller coaster ride, and that the experience is very rare in life, and at any rate cannot be constant or frequent by its very nature, lest we explode, right? Can't just ride that roller coaster all the time. Only sometimes can you tolerate that kind of intensity of thrills. Mill responds that this is a misunderstanding of happiness. We find both moments of extreme excitement and rest from them, or tranquility, to be pleasant, and both are parts of happiness. In that sense, happiness as pleasure can be frequent and even constant. So, not only the roller coaster ride is pleasant, but so is the rest between such roller coaster rides. And if that's right, then we can just be in a state of pleasure or happiness all of the time, or most of it. Also, in response to these criticisms, Mill offers two real reasons as to why people fail to achieve happiness, instead of the less tenable claims that happiness is impossible or rare. So, two reasons for why people miss happiness. Real reasons. One, if a person cares for no one but themselves, if a person fails to extend their interests and affinities beyond themselves and to identify with others, their happiness is that much smaller. When we care for others, what Mill called the social affect in his discussion of higher pleasures, we feel their suffering as our own, but also their happiness. And our interactions with them are just that much more fulfilling and happiness creating. People fail to achieve happiness to the extent that they fail to care for all kinds of others, human others, animal others, etc. The real reason why people fail to obtain happiness, according to Mill, is that they fail to care for those others other than themselves. Two, the second reason for why people fail to achieve happiness. If a person does not take an intellectual interest in the world and fails to contemplate the wonders and complexities and mysteries of existence, the source of their happiness is that much smaller. Contemplation here is in contrast to use. There is a deeply fulfilling joy from contemplation of wonders of the world for our mind, what Mill refers to as intellect, imagination, and feeling in his discussion of higher pleasures. And that kind of joy cannot be obtained through mere use of what there is in the world. So, people fail to achieve happiness to the extent that they fail to take an intellectual interest in and learn about and contemplate the world. Nature, history, architecture, astronomy, what have you. All of these things are amazing. And if one does not learn to contemplate and wonder at their complexity and how they work, one is missing out quite a bit on what happiness is for beings of mind like ourselves.